Let me just say at the outset, before I bring up the fine pastor of this church to give the invocation and his own welcome, let me just start by saying that I was just suggesting to a reporter for the Baltimore Sun. She asked me, why Baltimore? Why Baltimore? And that's part of the answer, why not? But the other part of the answer that I share with her is simply this, that Baltimore, for me, every time I come here, represents a metaphor for the black experience in America. Tell you what I mean by that. It's raining outside right now, and y'all fought y'all's way through the rain to get up in here this morning. You fought your way through the rain. And every time I come to Baltimore, I'm reminded by this city of its great possibility. You look at the inner city, that's one thing. You go to the harbor, you see something else. I'm reminded of the great possibility of this city, but at the same time, I see the challenges this city faces. And that's what the black experience in America is all about. Somebody once said that what the American people want is simple. They want an America as good as its promise. No more, and God knows, no less. All we want is an America as good as its promise. And that's all the residents of Baltimore want. A city as good as its promise. In a state as good as its promise. Now, our role has always been in this country, and we've used a lot of different strategies, sometimes interposition, sometimes nullification, sometimes amendment, sometimes boycott, sometimes protest. But our story is the story of forcing America to live up to its truest ideals, to be a nation that is as good as its promise. And every time I come here, I see a people, a black people, who fight through the odds every day, who fight through the rain to come inside to be a part of this conversation. It's a metaphor for the black experience in America. So give yourself some love for being here today. And I'm delighted that you are here. Delighted. I wouldn't think of doing a tour about making black America better and not coming to the city of Baltimore. So I'm delighted that so many of you are here on this day. He needs no introduction, of course, in his own church. But let me just say, in the presence of Pastor Vaughn and all those on the staff here at this great church, Sharon Baptist, and all of you in the audience, that we are in the midst of what is essentially a 20-city tour. And I'd be lying if I stood here this morning and told you that every pastor I called said, y'all come. I can't even tell you that. We've had to call sometimes 2, 3, 4 churches in certain cities to find one who welcomed us in, who'd open up the doors and turn on the lights and ask their staff to come to work on a Saturday morning, early on a Saturday morning, to accommodate our being here today. Not everybody has said, Tavis, y'all come. But I'm so glad that there are still some churches who are still on the vanguard of our struggle, who still understand that the real work of the church does not lie or rest inside of these 4 walls, but the real work of the church is out in the streets. Jesus never had no church. He didn't pastor no church. He was doing his work out amongst the people. There's nothing wrong with us coming together. We don't want to ever forsake the assembling of ourselves together. We know that where there are 2 or 3 of us are gathered, that he will be in the midst of us and something can get done. It's a whole nother thing, when you ask somebody to open up their doors to let you come in to have a conversation, and a conversation that's radical. Radical in the sense that we are going to take control of our own destiny. So not everybody welcomes you in for that kind of conversation, but I'm glad to be in Baltimore, and I'm glad that when we called him, without any hesitation or equivocation whatsoever, Pastor A.C.D. Vaughn said, Tavis, y'all come, and we are here. Please. Since he's going to give a welcome and an invocation, and he deserves it anyway, stand to your feet and welcome the pastor of this church, Dr. A.C.D. Vaughn.
I'm 100% happy to welcome you to Sharon. I said Sunday after Sunday, this is not our house, but it's your house, because it belongs to our Father, and all of his children have a welcome here. I'm delighted to have you here, and I want Pastor Johnson to stand because I'm an old man, he's a young man, and we share this ministry. The Bible says young men are for war. That means he can still fight. Amen. I serve to give advice. Amen. We are blessed to have you here at Sharon. And I love to tell it, I was one time janitor here, and next year I will celebrate 50 years of pastoring. The Lord has been mighty good to me. We are so welcome, so glad to welcome you this morning. We're glad to have you here. And we open the doors because we should open the doors. I believe that you ought not have to have an invitation or a key. You ought to be able to come to your Father's house anytime you need to, particularly when you're concerned about those things that really affect our people. We are proud to say Sharon is 121 years old, born in a horse stable right around the corner. We've never been located less than 3 blocks from where we are, and we're proud of that. We're proud to have you here this morning. You're at home here, and since you're at home here, you're going to behave yourself, aren't you? Amen. And I say that because you're at home. We're going to pray and let us get about the business that we are here for. I certainly encourage you to get this book because I already have it. And you need to have this on your library, and you need to digest it. Isn't that right? I make one request of you, if you will, either put your cell phone off or put it on vibrate like I'm going to do. I'm going to cut mine off. I don't care to hear from anything this morning but heaven and you. Let us pray. Oh God, our Father, we thank you for this day. And we thank you that you gave us another resurrection. You didn't have to do it. And we really don't have to wait until Easter Sunday to see the beauty of the miracle, because every 24 hours you resurrect us. And for this we say thank you. We thank you that we can open the doors of this church this morning because it's your house, and you've kept it open for 121 years. We pray that I would bless now your servant, Brother Tavis, and all of those who come this morning to talk about our covenant with America. Be thou with us, and grant that we would do heart searching, and grant, Lord God, that even though we identify the problems, we would be part of the solution. Make our discussion a thing that will honor us, because we are royal stock. We are your children. We're not ashamed of the fact that you brought us as a royal people from the shores of Africa to this land. And even though we came from Africa, we don't have to come begging, because we put our blood in America. And we thank you, Lord, that some of us are not ashamed of our blackness, and not ashamed to let the world know that if our book, the Bible, be true, and you made all of us out of one blood, it was certainly black blood. And for that we thank you. In the name of him who is the ruler of this universe, we say amen.
There are a number of distinguished persons who have come out to be a part of this tour as we moved across the country. I normally don't take the time, because we don't have the time, to run through all of them in the audience, and I won't do that again this morning, but there is a particular person I do want to recognize, because she is one of the leaders in our community. President Clinton, as you may recall, tapped her to be on his race commission that was led by the great John Hope Franklin, one of our distinguished historians, led that commission on race. in America, and she was a member of that commission, pastors a church in Harlem, up in New York, but she's down here this morning to spend time with her friend, Pastor Vaughn. Please welcome Reverend Dr. Susan Johnson Cook, who's on the front row now. All right, we got to get started. Let me ask, everybody in here should have a covenant card. Let me see them, wave them at me. Let me see these covenant cards. So you can get this shot here. I want everybody to see. Pull it out, you're gonna need it. It's gonna be like Bible study for the next 2 hours. So you need your card. Let me see your card. If you don't have one, raise your hand, they'll bring one to you right now. Wave your hand if you don't have it so they can see the difference between those who have and those who do not have. Hold your hands up, they come in, everybody should have one of these cards. Everybody should have a card. They're doing that right quick. Can't follow the conversation without a card. Now, how many folk have books already? Wave your books at me. Let me see the books. Let me see these books. Put them up, put them up, put them up, put them up, put them up. There you go. Put them up, put them up, put them up. There you go. I want to see these books. Let me see the books. All right. That's what I need to see. All right. That's important because we are going to reference this text a few times throughout the conversation this morning. Let me just tell you where we're going with this conversation. We're going to spend just a few minutes talking with this panel to get the conversation going very quickly. But the majority of this conversation this morning is for you in this town hall setting to express yourself. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear your comments. All politics is local ultimately. And this cannot just be a best-selling book, because if it's just a best-selling book, it eventually will start to collect dust somewhere in your house. The real key is to operationalize this covenant. The real key is to implement this covenant. The real key is to localize this covenant. Why are we here? Because at the end of the day, if we don't localize it, if we don't take what's in it and put it to work here in Baltimore and across America, then it don't mean nothing. And I'm not interested in just being a best-selling book. There's more to what this movement is about. Cornell West, our dear professor who's been on this tour with us, who's not here today, we will see him in Seattle tonight. But Dr. West has said repeatedly, the challenge for us around this text is whether or not we can go from moment to momentum to movement. There are a few things in our life that become movements. The symposium we do every February on C-SPAN is always a high-quality moment every February. But now this book has allowed us to have some momentum. Can we turn that momentum into a movement? And that's what we are trying to do here, to put the spirit of the covenant out throughout the country. Now, I need you to stand. Everybody stand right where you are. If you have the book, turn to the table of contents. Is your book, Pastor? If you have a book, turn to the table of contents. If you don't have the book, turn to the back of your covenant card. Table of contents in the text, or the back of your covenant card. And Dr. Vaughn says, I've always wanted to say this. When you have it, signify by saying amen. Amen. I've always wanted to say that for some reason. We are going to read together the covenant number and the covenant title in unison so that we are all on the same page, literally and figuratively, as we start this conversation. Let's read together. Covenant number 1, securing the right to health care and well-being. Covenant number 2, establishing a system of public education in which all children achieve at a high levels and reach their full potential. Covenant number 3, correcting the system of unequal justice. Covenant number 4, fostering accountable, community-centered policing. Covenant number 5, ensuring broad access to affordable neighborhoods that connect to opportunity. Covenant number 6, claiming our democracy. Covenant number 7, strengthening our rural roots. Covenant number 8, accessing good jobs, wealth, and economic prosperity. Covenant number 9, environmental justice for all. And covenant number 10, closing the racial digital divide. Now put your books down, put your hands together, and let's own what we have just read. Let's own what we have just read. Let's own it. You may take your seat. It's important for us to understand before we start conversing what we are conversing about. Now, the reason why I told you need this text is going to be like Bible study. We're going to go back to this a few times. For those who have the text, turn to page number 1, the page marked number 1. Since we in church, you sit next to somebody who ain't got a book, share yours. We in church, let's act like it. If you don't have a book or haven't gotten it yet, you can sneak out downstairs right now and get one, because you're going to need it. I promise you, you're going to need it. And if you don't have one now, you can get it at the end. But that line will be a whole lot shorter for you if you get it now before we get to the end. But you don't want to leave here without this book. This is one of the best-selling books in America. We'll talk about that in a moment. And some of y'all know it ain't been easy to find. Amen? Amen. That's what I figured. So you better get it today while they got them here. We brought them here with us, so you can get it today. But you're going to need this to follow the conversation. Let me walk through right quick. Chapter 1, I want to show you, and I want you to follow me to understand the simple framework that's making this book so usable for our people. This was written and laid out and designed with everybody in mind. As we say in Baltimore, everybody. Designed with everybody in mind. Whether you are 8 or 18 or 80, we designed this for each of you. So I want to walk you through what the framework is for each of these chapters to see how simple it is, how straightforward it is, how usable it is for every one of us. On page number 1, what you see is the introductory essay to the health chapter, Securing the Right to Health Care and Well-Being, written by Dr. David Satcher. Now, with all due respect to the pastors and the politicians, we did not go to them for the essays to these chapters. If you're going to write a chapter about a particular issue, doesn't it make sense to go get the experts to write the essay? If you're going to do the health chapter, why not the former Surgeon General, Dr. David Satcher, to write the introductory essay? So, every chapter starts with a short 2 or 3 page introductory essay to set the stage for the conversation that you will have with yourself and with others about this particular issue. Turn right quick to page number 8. I told you you're going to need a book. Turn to page number 8. Once you get past the introductory essay, we've laid this out for you very simply. What you have there are the facts on the issue, laid out for you in bullet form so that you can read very simply what the facts are on this issue. Now, why is that important? Because we can't be uninformed. You can't have a conversation with nobody if you don't know what you're talking about. You got to have the facts. And as we move forward to operationalize and implement this document, we want each of us to be informed about what the facts are. Beyond that, when you start to read these facts at the beginning of each chapter, you cannot be but moved by the condition that our people are in. When you read these facts, it ought to unsettle you. You ought to be unsettled. This conversation this morning ought to unsettle you. If you leave here this morning unsettled, then we didn't do our jobs. You can't read the condition of our people and see how socially, politically, economically, and culturally disenfranchised we are and not be moved to do something about it. So we start by giving you what the facts are. Turn right quick to page number 11. After the facts, we give you a brief overview of what the possibilities are. Now that we've hit you with all that negativity, which happens to be our reality, then we want you to see what the possibilities are and what we can do if we put our minds to it. If each of us commits to doing the best we can with what we have right where we are, this represents what the possibilities hold for our community. Turn to page number 12. Now we into the good stuff. Good stuff. After we do that, we want you to know what every individual can do right now. Whether you are 8, 18, or 80, here's what every individual in our community across America can do right now. You see that word now? Right now. This is what we can start doing today. Right now, what every individual can do. After that, slide down the page, you see what works now. Now we start to tell you, after we talk to your individual spirit, what's already working in our community across the country. Now, just because here in Baltimore we're not making the kind of progress we want on a particular issue laid out in this book, trust me on this, there's somebody black in America who's figured out a way to progress on this issue, on this challenge, on this question. And what we have never had before is a book that lays out a blueprint, a game plan, a guidebook with examples of what is working right now that the rest of us can emulate. We ain't got to reinvent the wheel on these issues. Somebody say amen. Amen. All we got to do is to take what's already working and strategize that where we are. But we lay out for you what's working on every issue in this country that we are challenged by. Turn to page number 16. After we do all of that, this is for all the media in the room, for all my conservative friends who say that black people don't believe in personal responsibility, and the problem is that we ain't handling our business. We've got some pathologies, no question about that. You see that laid out in the text. That's why we're here to talk about how to make black America better. And when you make black America better, you make all of America better. So we got some challenges to be sure. But we close each chapter after we talk to what we can do as individuals. Follow me on this. This is laid out by design. We start by saying, here's what we need to do as individuals. Secondly, since we individuals make up a community, here's what we need to do as a community. And we close, not start, but end with telling the elected officials and the leaders what they must do. Did y'all get that? We starting with us. We ending with them. Why? Don't nobody owe us nothing. They, whoever they are, don't owe us anything, but we owe each other everything. But we got to hold these elected leaders accountable. And I don't care if they are black. Y'all didn't clap loud enough on that. They must be held accountable. Now, hold that card back up. Let me see those cards. I'm going to tell you why I gave this to you. It ain't because it's a little cute free giveaway. That ain't what this is about. I had it done and gave it to you free because we feel passionately about this, but it ain't just a little cute idea. The reason why you have this is to put this in your purse. Put this in your wallet, brothers. You should never leave home. Some of y'all remember that commercial, huh? Showing your age because they ain't ran that in a while. Don't leave home without it. You should never come in contact with any politician, any candidate, any leader, any black person. In any conversation you find yourself about our condition, you ought to pull this out. Bam! And jump straightway into a conversation about what ails us. And moreover, about what we're going to do about it. I want you to take this with you for time eternal. Pull this out until we solve these issues, which we know ain't going to be tomorrow. But you keep this with you. You pull this out whenever you need it to engage in conversation. Turn back to your book right quick to page number 20. This is for all you smart Negroes. All you educated black folk, all you academics, all you students, all you researchers. Everything in this book is connected to a source. We didn't make none of this up. This may be the most important part of every chapter in here, the end notes, where we got this information. So you can do more research, more reading, more study. At the end of the book, in Hakeem Adabudi's close is afterward, behind that, you will find a suggested reading list. So in addition to the covenant, we give you other books you might want to read to inform yourself, to empower yourself. Why? Because information is power. Knowledge is power. Don't you understand that? Now, that said, before we jump to this conversation, let me tell you where we are as we sit in Baltimore this morning with regard to the covenant. I want you to know that on March the 26th, this book premiered on the New York Times bestseller list at number 6 on March 26th. Last Sunday, April 2nd, we jumped up on the New York Times bestseller list to number 4. And we now know that tomorrow in the New York Times, the book review, the bestseller list, The Covenant with Black America has jumped to number 2. Number 2. This is now the second best-selling book in the world. The second best-selling book in this country. Number 2 on the New York Times list. Now let me tell you, I didn't jump to your feet on that, so let me just tell you how significant that is. I know it's early, we're going to wake y'all up in here. In the history of this country, in the history of black people, in the history of the New York Times, there has never, ever, 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 never, ever, never, 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 ever been a nonfiction book. And I might add a book that ain't got no pictures in it. A non-fiction book. I'm not talking about our friends who write the fiction stuff that we love to read. I love them all. I ain't talking about Terry McMillan, fiction. Elin Harris, fiction. Eric Jerome Dickey, fiction. B.B. Moore Campbell, fiction. List goes on and on and on. Never a non-fiction book by, for, about, and published by black people that has hit the New York Times bestseller list. That's never happened. It has never, ever happened until now. Now, why is that important? It's important not just to be on the list. We hope that we're going to push this thing up to number one, and with your help, we're going to do that. Why can't black folk be number one? What's wrong with that? And if we could have the number one movie in America a few weeks ago, Madea Family Reunion. I ain't mad at Tyler Perry, but we gonna crush that old adage that to keep a secret with us, put it in the pages of a book. We're gonna crush that notion, and we already are. See, the power of this whole movement, first and foremost, is that we got folk reading. This ain't a movie. This ain't a CD. This ain't Prince's 3121. This ain't T.I.'s King. It's not a movie, it's not a CD, it's a book. We have people doing in our community what they ought to be doing, which is reading. That's a miracle unto itself. Never mind being on the list. And the fact that folk are craving the book and coming to these conversations in Baltimore in the rain, something is happening in black America. What we want to do is to maximize this moment. So you tell your friends about this. You go online to Amazon.com, Borders.com, BarnesandNoble.com, go into the store, get it today, buy all the copies for your friends that you know need to have it, and get your money back. But we want to push this book up to number one on the list. And we do that again, not just to be number one, but moreover because that forces America to have a conversation about what's in the book. That's how you get your issues out there. Because they're already starting to write about the phenomenon of how these Negroes put a book on the list. It's never happened. Now let me tell you right quick. There are 3 bona fide ways to put a book on the bestseller list. If you're ever going to write a book, let me give you a secret. You're going to write a book, here's how you get on the bestseller list. Say amen, Iyanla. Iyanla knows this. Iyanla has been on the bestseller list in the New York Times. So she knows this. And she had a little help doing that. Because there are 3 ways to get on the list. Speaking of Baltimore and her connection here, the first way, anybody want to guess? There you go. If you get on Oprah, you will get on the list. Number 2, the Today Show. You go on the Today Show, you get on the list. Number 3 is NPR, specifically 2 shows, Fresh Air with Terry Gross, for you public radio listeners, and Morning Edition. You get on one of those 2 shows, you will get on the list. This is research, this is data. Oprah, Today, NPR puts you on the list. Can I just tell y'all, we ain't been on Oprah. We ain't been on the Today Show. And we ain't been on NPR. And this is the number 2 book on the New York Times bestseller list. Now, the point here is that black folk did that. Black folk did that. Don't tell me what can't happen when we come together. Don't tell me what can't happen. So I don't accept failure as an option. Ain't no excuses for not turning around this city. If we get serious here in Baltimore, it can happen. And we brought you this text and this conversation to give you the energy, to infuse you, to imbue you with that energy, that love, that support. Cornel West says, you can't lead the people if you don't love the people. And you can't save the people if you won't serve the people. You can't lead them if you don't love them. You can't save them if you won't serve them. We got to start serving our own best interest and moreover serving our people. I wanted to tell you what we were with this text before we started this conversation. Now, that said, we want to spend the balance of our time with you having the opportunity to ask your questions, to raise your issues in the time that we have. We are going to walk out of here, out of this sanctuary at 9 a.m. We're going to go wherever we're going to go to sit for 30 minutes and sign your books as quickly as we can to get to the airport to catch our plane to the 11. I'm sorry, 11. Thank you, Rusty. Thank you. Woo. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's California time. My watch always stays on the other. Anyway, go walk out here at 11. Sign your books for 30 minutes. At 11:30, we've got to get in the car to get to the airport to catch our flight out of BWI to get to Seattle. So we're going to make the most of our time here this morning, but we want to give the balance of it to you to raise your questions, raise your issues rather, to ask your questions after we get a little conversation started. Let me start with our friend Dr. Tyrone Taborn. Please welcome Dr. Tyrone Taborn. Let me tell you about Tyrone. You want to know something about technology, you better call Tyrone. Turn to page in your books, page number 213. 213 is opens the last covenant in the book. And we say this covenant, we started with, let me just tell you these two things. I don't know why the other stuff fell where it fell. But we started the book with health and ended it with technology. We started with health because if you ain't got your health, you ain't got jack. So first of all, we got to start with our health. That's why the book opens with that covenant. But we close with technology because technology is really about the future and what we can do in the future. But it's also about right now. And there's so many things right now that we are not doing, in fact, that we can and ought to be doing to improve our own community that embraces technology. I've been waiting to get to Baltimore. We've been talking about different issues along the way, but I have not had a chance to jump into this issue because Tyrone is in Baltimore, and I'm glad he's here this morning. So Tyrone, I want you to know, writes the introductory essay, one of your own, writes the introductory essay to the last covenant chapter in the book. Now give Baltimore some more love right there. Now, that said, right quick, Tyrone, one of the other things about this book that is so moving to me is not just that we got people reading, but some of you know from listening to the Tom Joyner Morning Show that the only reason this book ain't at number one already, as some of y'all in this room know, is because they ran out of books. You can't move up the list if there ain't no books for folk to buy, except you go online. Now, I don't have any data to support this, no data to support this yet. But given what has transpired here, I got a real good feeling, Tyrone, that this book is already the most purchased book by black people online of any nonfiction book ever. And I say that because when there were no books available in the stores, we kept moving up the list from 6 to 4. Now, how do you do that when I know there ain't no books out there? We did it because y'all were going online to Amazon, Borders, Barnes & Noble, ordering the book. And the minute you order it from them, it rings up as a sale. That gets tabulated in the weekly sales. So we were moving up the list when there weren't no books on the shelves because black folk were going online. You see where I'm going with this, don't you? Black folk were using technology to get this text. Now, there's so much more that can be done, but speak to me right quick, Tyrone, about what the challenges are, what the opportunities are, and how we use this text, what they're going to find in this text that helps us embrace technology in this new age.
Tavis, I'm going to do that, but the first thing I want to say, Baltimore, let's give Tavis love for giving us this gift.
Thank you, Tyrone. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much. I thank you.
And the gift, Tavis, you're right. We're number one. The book is on number one Amazon, places like that. And the reason is no one can tell us that we don't care about our community and we don't care about our issues. Very quickly, just let me say we're in a lot of trouble right now. 50% black boys are dropping out of school, out of high school in the inner cities. And this is happening at a time where China, India, other Asian countries are coming online. We risk not simply being pushed to the side. We risk as a people of being completely irrelevant, not counting for anything. So this issue of technology is not going to change. China produces 500,000 engineers every year. India, 250,000. In the U.S., we get out the door, Tavis, 3,800 black kids, and largely those kids who become engineers, 3,800, right out of the world's number. Those kids come out of 11 historically black colleges. This is not about an issue of simply education. This is an issue of survival. Now, the final thing, I'm glad we started with healthcare, because that's one area where disproportionately you can look at almost any major disease and we die from those diseases because we don't have access. One hope at the very minimum that the internet does for us and web-based technology is allow us to take control of our health space so that we, again, can use ourselves and be empowered to live longer.
Give me a tease. I want to give them, I've already read it, obviously, many times. Share with them a little bit about the point you make in your introductory essay before they get home and get a chance to read it. What are you trying to say to them in this essay?
The first thing I say is that technology has changed lately within 30 years, that while it seems that we can't get on board, there is still hope. That is what I really try to frame, that if we're willing, it is not completely too late. We can still get on board, but we've got to take the power. We have to take our own self-destiny and move forward.
What is that window? Because there are folk who have already argued that we are so far behind with regard to technology and the web and the internet that we ain't never going to catch up. You disagree, but what's that window?
I would say about 15 years, because after 15 years, we're educating generation of kids right here in Baltimore. Frederick Douglass, less than 3.5% of the kids can pass the algebra test at Frederick Douglass right here. So we have a whole number of generations that are coming out, and if we don't turn that around, I give us 10 to 15 years, and we might as well forget it. At that point, we might as well resign ourselves to the fact that black people in this country will simply be widgets for the healthcare industry to do research and for the prison systems to grow. And that's our role. That will be our role.
Did y'all hear that? I told you, you can't leave me this morning without being unsettled. Yana said, and I'm going to follow her advice, to just take a breath right here. And she's serious about that. 10 to 15 years, if we don't do something about our condition right now. I just had a brother ask me in another interview before I came in. He asked me a brilliant question. Brother Tavis, do you think this is our last best chance to turn our community around? And I echoed Tyrone. I said, absolutely. And that's not being fatalistic. It's being realistic. We live in the most multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic America ever. Next year, we will have been here 400 years. You history buffs know this. Next year, our symposium that we do every February will be in Jamestown, Virginia. Because next year represents 400 years since the Africans arrived at Jamestown. Now, think about this for just a second. We've been here 400 years now, and look at how they maltreated us after Hurricane Katrina. That's the kind of treatment that we engender after being here and building this place we call America for 400 years. And now it's come to this, where we've got, according to Tyrone and others, 10 to 15 years at one last best chance to get serious about turning around our community. The timing of this covenant text could not be more propitious. We were already working on the covenant when the hurricane hit. And I just thank God when I looked at what was happening there, or not happening, as it were. I thank God we were already working on this, because I knew then that when we get on the other side of this, we're going to need a plan. We're going to have an agenda. And it's got to be about the people, not about the leaders. Ella Baker, the great black activist, put it this way. Ella Baker said that a strong community does not need a leader. A strong community does not need a leader. Gandhi put it this way: we are the leaders we've been looking for. We're the leaders we've been looking for. But if we don't get serious about where we are right now, then I shudder to think what happens to babies yet unborn. Before I let Iyanla grab the mic right quick, turn to the cover of your book, cover your covenant card, and just look at this for a second. Speaking of the future, I want to tell you a quick story. In the cover of this book, you see the face of a child, an 8-year-old child whose face I chose to use to create this digital photograph. An 8-year-old child, Susan, who lives in Brooklyn. lives in Brooklyn, New York. After I chose the photo and we laid the picture out and done all of what you see here, I called the photographer back. I told you this project is all the way black, 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 all the way through. Everybody connected is black. The photographer is a black, world-renowned photographer named Chester Higgins Jr. So Chester did the photograph of this young girl, 8-year-old, who lives in Brooklyn. After we'd done all this, I called Chester back one day. I said, Chester, I'm just curious. I never asked you, what is this young girl's name? Tell me something about her. He said she's 8 years old. I shot the picture in Brooklyn. She lives in Brooklyn. And her name is Sojourner. And that's the kind of God we serve. Her name is Sojourner. Now, in Sojourner's face, those pensive eyes you see staring at you, in Sojourner's face you see hundreds of black photos. Photos that I ask people through the Tom Joyner Morning Show to send in to me of their mama them, their daddy them, their grandmama them, their great daddy them. Send me photos of your ancestors, because I want to put together a cover that has the face of the child, the future. And in her face, we have the past. All of our ancestors, our past, our present, and our future, all wrapped up in the cover of this book. When you go to our website, covenantwithblackamerica.com, you can click on Sojourner's face and click on any one of the pictures in her face, and it pops up as a larger image on your screen and tells you a story, as Sly Stone would say, about these everyday people who've made America the great nation that she is even today. Now, in the text, if you have it, turn to the title page. That would be the very first page in the book. Turn to it right quick, the very first page in the book. After you see Sojourner's face on the cover and those eyes staring at you, then you turn to the title page and here's what you read. The eyes of the future are looking back at us, and they are praying for us to see beyond our own time. I want you to get a visual on that. The eyes of the future are looking back at us and praying for us to see beyond our own time. That's what this covenant movement is all about. It's about the babies. It's about black kids yet unborn. It's about knowing that there are a bunch of babies in the future looking back at us and praying for us, Tyrone, to do what we got to do in these next 10 to 15 years so that they are not subjected to an everyday hell when they come this way. We got to be unsettled when we leave here this morning. Iyanla, it seems to me that if we're going to be unsettled, and let me ask you first of all to welcome New York Times bestselling author and sister we love, Iyanla Vanzant. Now, Iyanla and I especially love each other because we have the same birthday. If you want to send gifts, September 13th. It seems to me, Iyanla, that if we are going to Tyrone's point, make the most of this moment, if we are going to maximize this moment, it's going to have to start with a shift in the way we think. And that's what you do every day. Talk to us about how we shift the way we think to own this moment, Iyanla.
Can I stand up for a second?
You certainly can.
Okay. This is my covenant. It is a divine document and a sacred opportunity. It is a promise to me, and I am the promise of it. I know that the promise shall be fulfilled with ease and grace and exponential increase, because it was created in love, and love is the universal healer. God is love, and I am the beloved child of God. This is my covenant. I don't know about you, but this is mine. I am so excited. I'm so excited. And yes, we in trouble, but we've been in trouble before. And what I've learned is that tension is what encourages us to grow. We can be comfortable and complacent eating our chips on the sofa and we ain't doing nothing. But get somebody a little upset, trigger them up a little bit, and they be looking for a way out. I am so glad that we are looking for a way out of the conditions and situations in this book. Tension is what makes us grow. And we've been here before. Don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted.
That's right.
We've been here before, in the bottom of the boat, chained, eating off of each other.
Don't you?
All right? So it's in our DNA. We know how to succeed. We know how to overcome this. So what we have to do is we have to turn the TV off, except when Tavis or me are on.
Thank you.
Yeah. We got to turn off the TV a little bit. We got to do the research. We got to talk to each other. We got to clean up our family, our home, our relationships. We got to clean up the way we talk to each other. Right in Silver Spring, Maryland, I'm working with women, I'm working with men. The Intervision's full life ministry. We look at every area of your life. It's not a commercial here, but I have been blessed. I don't know why. I have been blessed to be able to know what it is that we need to heal our heart and our mind. We've got to learn how to think. We have to put images before us that we see. My bedroom, I look like a lunatic. I have all kinds of things hanging off the lampshade up on the wall. Me, Iyamla. But I have to remind myself, because if I don't, I'll get tricked by what I see. Powers and principalities in high places. The highest place in our life is our mind. All they have to do is drop a seed in your mind, and it'll start growing. It'll be turn weeds. It'll bring friends, and before you know it, you're stuck in depression, self-sabotage, denial. So be careful about what you put before your eyes. Get off some of these things that are on TV. Get off of them. The thing eating bugs and crawling around in the dirt, and now the people are cutting each other's throat at $1 a minute to try to win $1 million. Come on now. Be careful what you put before your eyes. What I want to offer is find the one thing, the one in this covenant that you know you need right now. I would say health. I would say health. Because as we begin to detoxify our bodies, thinking becomes clearer. Some of us can't think because our mind is complicated by a rib we ate back in '56. The rib is now communing with the old hot dog that we had at the baseball game. And the two of them have a conspiracy of poisoning our entire being. If we can't control what goes in our mouth, people, how are we going to build a community? Digging our grave with a fork. Control what goes in your mouth and what goes in your mind. After the covenant came out, I was trying to be home and mind my business. But then I got a call from HUD, and they asked me if I would be a spokesperson to educate the Black and Latino community about lead poisoning. And because of the covenant, I said, yes, I will. So beginning on April 19th, I will begin a 3-year, 30-city tour educating people about the toxicity of lead in our old tenement apartments, because that's where the ADD and the ADHD are coming from. We don't even realize it, and it affects males, the lead, because of the testosterone more than females. So we'll be doing that. Guard what you put before your mind. Guard what you put in your mouth. If your relationship is in trouble with your mama, your daddy, your sister, boo-boo down the hall, get help. We can't build a community if we keep tearing down our families. And it starts with how we see each other. Everybody's hurting. Stop comparing your hurts. Stop comparing your hurts. Don't be a victim of your own pain. I want to tell you just something real quick. I know we got to move quickly. Tavis signed my covenant for me when he was in D.C. And I had my one little covenant, and I was taking it everywhere. You see mine is red, right? The blue is what the elected officials do. The yellow is what we do, and the pink are the highlights in the chapter, okay? Because I want to be able to spit it out. Somebody say something to me, healthcare, I know what you do. Prisons, yeah, man, I know the numbers. I was horrified when I read that 19% of African American women today have a 1 in 3 chance of going to prison. The women. So where's our babies going? Okay? So anyway, I had my covenant, and I was taking it everywhere, and I went to this conference, and I put it down, I was talking to people, and when I went back to get my covenant was gone.
Oops.
I couldn't look. I looked at my purse, and I was everywhere. So I said, I had my name in it. I had my little return address sticker. Anyway, I came home. Yesterday, when I got home, I had a letter in the mail. No return address, no nothing. and I opened it up. I meant to bring it so I could show it to you. It was a letter and a paper clip with a $20 bill. So I read the letter. It said, "Dear Miss Van Zandt, I saw you in Kansas. You spoke to me about so and so and so, and I'm writing to confess that I liberated your covenant." I am ashamed to say that I stole it from you, but I was ashamed to tell you that I didn't have the money to buy one. So I took yours so I could read it. And just a few days ago, it said, I opened the page and saw where Mr. Smiley had signed it for you. And I felt too guilty not to send you the money for the covenant. Hallelujah. Somebody stole the covenant to read it. This is a person who's in search of healing and living and life. This is it, y'all. We've been here before. We know what to do. It's in our DNA. We cannot fail. The bones are talking. They're right here on the cover, yeah? The bones are talking, and they're standing up in us now. Hold on to this. Know it by heart. One line out of each chapter. Spit it out at people. Spit it out at them. Like Tavis said, don't speak to anybody where you ain't quoting the covenant. What's your covenant message today? 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 Know it, speak it, live it, teach it, walk it, talk it, eat it. And finally, anybody in this audience, anybody you know that has hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, you haven't called me. I guarantee you in 120 days, I can lower your blood pressure. Get your diabetes under control. 3 things. Prayer, what you put in your mouth, and how you think. InnerVisionsWorldwide.com. I'm going to do an online program to eradicate hypertension. I've done it. I can do it again. If you just show up, we'll get it done.
I was almost in tears, Iyanla. I had to just catch myself. And I wasn't the only one. I looked down at Eddie and saw him in the same situation. It pains me to hear that kind of story about the pain that our people are enduring. But that people want a way out. So much so that they would go to the point of stealing, liberating, I like that word, liberating her covenant. Didn't have money to get it, but wanted to be empowered by it. We cannot leave here without being unsettled about the condition of our people. Dr. King put it this way: the ultimate measure of a people is not where they stand in times of comfort and convenience, but where they stand in times of controversy and challenge. These eyes, as Iyanla said, are staring back at us. We are going to be judged by what we do in this moment. And I pray that this covenant will help us find a way. Please welcome Joy Thomas Moore of the Annie E. Casey Foundation here in Baltimore. Y'all got the reason for having these local conversations is to get you to see that you got the resources right here in your own city. Iyanla, Silver Spring, Tyrone's here, Joy is here. I'm going home. But you got the resources here. But most importantly, the resources are right here. We just got to operationalize this and implement what we find in the text. Joy works with the Annie E. Casey Foundation, has been a strong supporter of my foundation, my TV show. You see there comes underwriting on our show every night. Everything that we do, we've been supported in for the last few years by the Annie E. Casey Foundation here in Baltimore. And so I thank Joy and the entire foundation for the work they do for us. But more importantly, their work, so much of it focuses on family, focuses on neighborhoods. And I wanted Joy to be here to talk about, right quick here, what they are finding the challenges are. And you can read about it. Go to your table of contents right quick. There are any number of chapters that cover the kind of work they do. But when you talk about Covenant 4, fostering accountable community-centered policing. When you talk about Covenant 5, affordable neighborhoods. We talk about Covenant 7, strengthening our rural roots. When you talk about Covenant 8, accessing good jobs and wealth and economic prosperity, all this stuff overlaps with the kind of work done by, financed by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. So I wanted Joy to be here to talk very quickly here and briefly about the kinds of challenges you all are finding that our community is facing specifically and what the way out is.
First of all, thank you so much for putting me right behind. I will absolutely answer that, but let me first say I want to publicly applaud you and Angela and the hundreds of folks who financed this, who have worked for the past year. It was only a year ago in February when Tavis said, we're going to do a covenant. We were in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, if anyone can pull this off, it's going to be Tavis. Because Tavis will not fail. And the support that he has received from all over the country, from here in Baltimore, has been absolutely amazing. That's the power that we have. And that's the kind of power that we will need to move from where we are now. So thank you, Tavis.
Thank you, Joe.
As I read the covenant, one of the first things that we've alluded to it, is that we have the data. We now have in one place data that will prove that what we're saying, the disparities, all the things that are keeping us where we are there. We don't have to guess it. We don't have to, sort of reinvent the wheel. It is there. And that is probably the most valuable piece of information that we at the foundation use. We can talk emotion. We know we can see folks hurting, but unless you can put figures to that, it doesn't have the same impact. And as Tavis said, take it with you. Take the book with you. Embrace it. Learn it. Each part of that. And what we do at the foundation is we are approached by organizations, and you probably know that, all the time. We are a national foundation in having local roots here in Baltimore. I was so pleased to see throughout the book that we have supported like 90% of the organizations and the people and the initiatives that are cited in the book for what works. That, I think, is, foundations don't do the work. We support people who do it and get it done. We don't reinvent the wheel. We support the wheels that are going in your communities every day. So that was actually every once in a while you have that moment where you're proud that you're working someplace. Mm-hmm. I was proud. Like I said, I like to find organizations and support organizations. I don't usually stand up and talk, so please forgive me. But I wanted to point out the one thread that is consistent throughout the covenant, and that's that hold your leaders and elected officials responsible and demand that they change current policy. You can do that now with the information in the book.
Thank you. Joy alluded to the fact that the work they do really is about supporting organizations that are already doing the work, and I can't begin to tell you, we don't have the time, the number of people I have been connected to on this project, those of us who came together because we all kind of meet at this nexus of the Annie E. Casey Foundation. There's an organization called Policy Link, who she mentioned, Angela Glover Blackwell, whose organization helped really take the lead in putting this text together where the data is concerned. And that was a connection that was made in part because of the Annie E. Casey Foundation. So they're really good about financing these programs and about putting people together, and they are a resource here in your own community. And I just wanted to bring that out, point that out to you for those of you who live and work in this community. Before we get to you and your questions, well, don't jump yet, but we'll get to these microphones in just a second. Before we do that, let me introduce our last speaker. He is he's a wonderful friend and just a brilliant brother. But to understand and really appreciate him, I got to tell just a very quick story. Cornel West, my dear friend and mentor and big brother, has been on this tour with us again. He could not be in Baltimore today. But Eddie is an interesting study. First of all, I love the brother because we both from Mississippi. Eddie's from Moss Point. I was born in Gulfport. We'll be two Mississippi boys who moved on to try to do other things. Eddie is a young brother who is a professor at Princeton. He was tenured as a professor just a few years ago at the age of 30. A tenured professor at 30. But the really cool part of the story, and just imagine that Cornel West is sitting here in this imaginary chair, grinning ear to ear. Imagine that he's sitting here, as usual, with his black shoes and black socks and three-piece black suit. Y'all know Dr. West, right? Always a three-piece black suit, the black rim glasses, and the big fro out of control. Just imagine that Dr. West is sitting here right here, grinning right now, as he always is when I say this on the road. This is the coolest story. And it points up, again, black people working together, and particularly African-American men. He was tenured as a professor at the age of 30 after having been a student of this guy, Cornel West. Cornel's student, goes on to get tenured at age 30. He is now the chairman of the department at Princeton that West teaches in. So, at our website, covenantwithblackamerica.com, you will find something called the Covenant Curriculum. It's a curriculum that West and Glaude created together that now teachers and professors, school systems this coming fall will be teaching the Covenant Curriculum. There's a whole semester-long course that they've written that goes along with this book at covenantwithblackamerica.com. When you go to the website, you can download it for free and teach yourself the course. Read the material at least that Glaude and West have put together. And so, it's always a treat for me to have West and Glaude together. The name is Glaude, G-L-A-U-D-E. First name Eddie, Princeton professor and chair of the African American Affairs Department at Princeton. Please welcome Professor Eddie Glaude.
It is such a distinct honor to be in this sacred house. I wouldn't be a child of my mama if I didn't thank Brother Tavis for making this moment possible. He stands in a grand tradition that goes back to Samuel Cornish and John B. Russell. Takes us to T. Thomas Fortune and Ida B. Wells and George Schuyler. Black folk who are courageous, who work in print, media, and radio to defend, to put forward our community's interests. So we want to thank Tavis for his courage, his imagination, his tenacity, and his willingness to put himself out there. I want to thank him right here. We want to get to this conversation, but let me say something, because I've been moved. I've moved to tears. What better way to begin the process of rebuilding our community than to set ourselves the task to read? So you need to understand that elites who seek to exploit everyday ordinary people presume that you will be comfortable in your ignorance.
Say it, Eddie.
You didn't hear me. They require that you are so preoccupied with making your way through the day that you will not take the time to give attention to their attempts to fleece you in the name of security, in the name of patriotism, and in the name of black love. Oh. So what we're trying to do here, you remember the Ella Baker quote, is to create an environment whereby everyday, ordinary black people will understand that they themselves are leaders. The days of the HNIC are over. The days of black people pimping in the name of black love are over. And the days of mainstream white America presuming that you and I are so caught up in the mess of our daily living that will lead us to allow them to continue to exploit us, those days are over. Don't come to the covenant. Don't come to the book as if it's Moses. Don't come to Tavis as if he's the Messiah. We have to look to ourselves. We're talking about a kingdom of priests. Y'all don't understand what it was in here. We're talking about a kingdom of priests where it's already inscribed on your hearts and in your mouth. You know what you're supposed to do. Frantz Fanon once said, each generation out of relative obscurity must discover its mission, fulfill it or betray it. Fulfill it or betray it. What kind of story are we going to tell our babies about how we responded to this moment? What kind of story am I going to tell my 9-year-old son about the ticket, the price of that ticket that was paid to allow this moment right here, right now to happen? Right? What are we going to do? Well, we know that the infant mortality rate in this region for black babies, right, is such that a child in Kerala, India, has a better chance of living than a black baby in Baltimore. Y'all don't hear me. Now, what does it mean when we have our own babies walking around the streets looking for love, finding it all in the wrong places? What does it mean when our own young folk, right, are trying to find their own voice? What did Al Jarreau say last night? He said, each of us have our own thumbprint on our throats, in our throats. We need to find our own voice. What do we do with a generation struggling to find its mission in the shadow of the 60s and the 70s? Everybody's talking about, well, I marched with Martin. I wish I was with Malcolm. What do we do with a generation of folk who were born after that moment? And people are telling you that the only thing worth doing is marching with those folk. How do we charge them with the task of living up to the bones, right, that are on the cover? I knew one day, I used to be the case, and Tavis and I talk about this all the time, and I got to close this, but I used to talk about it all the time. I felt like I was born out of time and place, right? I wished I was able to stand with the Panthers. I wish I was able to stand post for Malcolm. I wish I could have joined hands with Martin and walked straight down Selma, Alabama, but I was born in 1968. That's not my time. Today's my time. Today is your time. And so I want to say to you right now, you're hearing it in the hip hop, you're seeing it in the swagger, you're hearing it in our attempts to find our voice. I just want to let you know right now that young black folk, young black men and women are beginning to straighten their backs. And when the children say, we will do it, the earth will move. And we want to let everybody know that no black elite, no black organization, no white elite, no white organization, nothing can stand in our way because God is at our back and the time is now. I hope our conversation goes well.
So as you can see, West didn't do too bad, huh? That's why Eddie and I both are just humbled when we get a chance to just spend any time with Dr. West, and we look forward to seeing him tonight in Seattle. Just being in his presence for us is powerful and moving. Speaking of Dr. West, turn to the call to action. at the back of the book that you will find on page number 239. Thank you. I like that. Somebody reading back there. Page 239. In the interest of time, actually jump to page 240. I just want to read one paragraph out of his call to action. After the book has been written and done, I called Dr. West and say, Doc, I need to write close on this thing. You got your opening act, and then you got your closer. So I'm looking for my Frankie Beverly and Mays to close this show. So I called Doc and said, Doc, I need to close, and he sent me this short piece, a page and a half long. Of course, when you're Cornell and you're so brilliant, it don't take you but a page and a half. I tease him all the time when he calls me on the phone. When I see his number come up on the caller ID, before I answer the phone, I grab my dictionary and my thesaurus before I answer the call. I know something brilliant's going to be said that I ain't going to get the first time. So I tell him all the time, this call is being recorded, so I can go back and play it again. But he writes a brilliant passage here. The last paragraph reads, follow me, our covenant is neither a contract nor a compact. A contract is too selfish, and a compact is too seasonal. Got to love West. Now is the time for us to keep faith with our spiritual, moral, and political covenant, bequeathed to us by great foremothers and forefathers, that simply says, stand with grace and dignity, and take action with courage and compassion, with malice toward none, yet a righteous indignation against injustice, so that everyday people, and especially their precious children, can flower and flourish as the sun shines and the stars shout with joy. Can't fade Dr. West. But that puts into context even more broadly what Brother Eddie and Sister Yala and Tyrone and Joy have been talking about. This is a moment that we have to maximize. Let me ask you, if you have a question or comment, to come to this microphone right here. Come on down. This microphone here, right here. Somebody get me a microphone up in the balcony, please. Raymond, Cheryl, somebody. Jezreel, find me a balcony microphone, please. And we're going to spend 30 minutes here. We got 30 minutes. 30 minutes to ask a quick question, make a quick statement. But if you stand in line right now, everybody in line, look at me, look at me, look at me. You stand in line, tap the person on the shoulder in front of you right now. And say, I'm behind you. Tap them on the shoulder and say, I'm behind you. But if you don't get your question out or your statement out, it will most likely be because the person in front of you went too long. Now, I'm going to do my best to keep it quick, and I'm telling you right now, this is all in the spirit of love. If you go past so many seconds, I'm going to cut you off. But I'm going to cut you off. I'm going to step in the name of love. I'm going to cut you off in the name of love. We want to cover as much as we can, and we have a very special guest who has made this tour possible, who I want to give 5 minutes at the end for him to address you. One United Bank, the biggest, baddest, most successful black bank in the nation, is sponsoring this tour, and their president and CEO, their chairman and CEO is in the house, and I want to give Kevin a chance to say a word at the end. But to get out of here on time, to sign your books and get to the airport, we got to make this happen. So I'm going to shut up right now and start right here. Yes, sir. This microphone, is this on? Tap it for me. I got no sound on the right microphone over here. Let's go to the left. See if this was on. This one on? Here we go. Let's start here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Corrigan Vaughn, and I have a question for the panel and also for Mr. Smiley real quick. As a young man who is trying to become a servant, the next United States Senator for this great state of Maryland, my question to the panel is, our premise is about people and principle and not party and politics. How do we get our people that look like us and act like us, respect us as leaders?
It's good. But Eddie, you want some of that? Is there a microphone up here? Okay.
First of all, thank you so much for your question. We have to move beyond the assumption that because someone looks like us, that they work in our interests. And we also need to understand, and I want to say this very clearly, that what constitutes our interest varies. We often assume that because we're black and because we live in X neighborhood that we should all have the same interests. We need to understand that it's precisely in the context of debate and conversation that we begin to get a sense of what are the ailments of our community, how ought we to respond to those ailments, and who best to choose to respond to those ailments. So we have to begin to move to the complexity of the political field as it is on the ground.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I applaud everyone on the book. Excellent book. But there's a gentleman that I've been associated with who also saw the glass ceiling at the top as he was working with IBM. And he wrote a book. He has a comprehensive plan, all right? Just like the book that you have in your hand, just like the one I have. It's more part 2 to the book that the Covenant. And what I asked you, Tavis, basically, is I put that book in your hand in Washington, D.C. about 3 years ago on Tom Jordan Morning Show 2 on Friday morning. I don't know if you read it. I don't know what happened to it. I'm bringing it again. This is the second time I'm going to put it in your hand. I hope you read it. C.T. Vivian embraced the gentleman. And I think you ought to embrace him and put him, take him along with you, okay?
Thank you. First of all, this is a moment that we as Black Americans, African Americans, whatever other kind of color American you are, you need to take advantage of it because it's frightening. And Tyrone, you're doing some things and you didn't lift them up, and I really would like for you to, about what people of color can be doing because we're not getting the jobs and we're in a knowledge-based society, and the reality is that the unemployment numbers are because we cannot fill the jobs that are technology-based. And any newspaper in America, if you go to the employment section, all of the jobs are in the technology and the engineering departments. It's that thick. That speaks volumes, and we have to look at that. Would you talk about your programs?
Well, thank you. One of the things I like to say is in the Covenant, I did not include this. The think tank included the Black Family Technology Awareness Week program as an activity for our community. That's something I think every church, every community group, every parent should be involved with. And we are having a tremendous impact in getting our kids excited about science and technology. Yes, it's www.blackfamilynet.net, but read your Covenant. It's in there. It's one of the recommendations. I think that's important. But to the first question that came up earlier about elected officials, let me say something. We need to stop people who run for a job and get people who want to do the job to run. Now, I'm going to say we see way too much of that. And what we see, unfortunately, and that's why this book is important, that many of our elected officials don't have a clue, Tavis. They don't understand it. I pointed out 11 schools that have accredited engineering programs are historically black colleges. There are over 300 accredited engineering programs. Only 11 are black. Those 11 graduate over 35% of all black kids in this country in engineering and computer science. In Baltimore and Maryland, Morgan State, 6 out of 10 black kids are enrolled at Morgan State. And guess what? People who want to run for Senate and our elected officials who control the federal budget, less than 1% of the research dollars, Tavis, go to black schools. We need to stand up and not want to keep a job, but we need to run to do the job. And part of it means that everybody in here pays taxes, and we deserve our fair share. The country should not continue to live off of us as it has with slavery. We just have a new kind of slavery. We just changed the name.
I would like to speak to an issue that Ayanla was talking about, women in prison. I work for a pilot program in Baltimore, Maryland, for pregnant women who are in jail. They are deterred to this program. The biggest problem is financing a program that works for black people. And my concern is not just funding it and this program that we know works, it's getting people who are culturally competent to assist in this program. We have had cut after cut after cut on the program, so it's not working as well as it could. And my question is, how do you get people to see the importance of women in jail and how it affects children?
Me? I don't know. I don't know. They need to be slapped. If they don't understand to see the importance of women in jail. But what I would say to you is, in getting people to work with you, there are incredible black social workers, black psychologists. I train coaches right here in Maryland who will come, who will volunteer time and services. My question to you is, are you asking for what you really want, or are you just upset about what you're not getting? You gotta speak it out. Speak it out.
I'm asking for what I want, but I'm not.
Well, what is it? Tell me what it is.
I'm not in control.
Yes, you are. That's what this said. This is your covenant. It is a promise to you, and you are the promise of it. You are in absolute, complete, total control of creating your reality and of being in service. And if you have the vision, God will give you the provision. Stop thinking small. Stop it. Stop.
Let me add to that. Again, and some of these questions come up, which I understand, because people haven't had a chance to read the text yet, because you just got it this morning. I ain't mad at you about that. When you get home, though, you read covenant number 3.
Yes.
We talk specifically about the crisis facing women in the penal system and offer specific suggestions of what ought to be done, what can be done with programs and policies that are working across the country. And you might want to check in with those organizations to find out how they get their resources and how they are being successful. But that's what this book is all about, giving you the information you need to not have to reinvent the wheel, but to find those persons who have those programs that are already working. So Covenant 3, sister in the balcony, I recommend you to read when you get home.
To you and to everybody else that has that kind of resource question, 3 things. Please, don't testify to what you don't want and what you can't do. When I say testify, I mean speak it. I don't know, I can't get it. That's number 1. Number 2, ask for what you want. Ask first to your Father, and then on the plane, and then of yourself. Are you really to stand in it? This is telling us to ask, to show up, and to claim it.
Good afternoon. The week before your book came out, I was heard the statistics that 50% of Baltimore City school children in the 9th grade do not graduate, and that there are 200,000 unemployed people in Baltimore. So we immediately got your book. A couple of us met together, and what are we going to do? So your book was perfect timing. We are going to be having a meeting in June. We don't have a location, but if anybody is seriously interested in taking this to a movement, we encourage you to email us at baltcovenant@aol.com, and we will. We have to steal your name. We wanted to keep it tradition with you. We want, because we want people to know that we are following your subscription or your prescription, because it's going to work. So we can make a difference, so I encourage you all to come out. We'll be taking emails today if you want to share it with us. We have 3 young ladies. baltcovenant@aol.com.
First of all, give her some love for even thinking that. Secondly, this is what we're talking about. Everyday people deciding that something can be done about the issues that matter to you. Now, you can't take all 10 of these things and make progress on all of them. But when you come together and have some dialogue, y'all can decide there's one thing that we're going to organize to do in this group at Balt Covenant, and do that. And that's how this covenant becomes a living, breathing document. I thank you for taking the initiative to do that.
Our meeting room, in our place. Black Engineer Magazine, Career Communications Group. My address is 729 East Pratt Street.
We
will give you our conference room to use. Let some of our CCG people just stand up real quick. Just grab her. We'll make it happen.
There you go. See, you see what I mean? That's what I'm talking about. Yes, ma'am.
It is said that the past is prologue. I'm a part of history. I'm a Baltimorean and born and bred. Went to Coppin State University, Coppin State Teachers College then, on the 3rd floor of an elementary school. And during segregation, you see, all of the teachers in Baltimore City were black, because all the schools were black. Now, the thing was, after you became a teacher in Baltimore, you could not go to Johns Hopkins or Towson or University of Maryland or Goucher. So they paid teachers to go to other schools around the country. They paid their tuition, their lodging, their travel, just so they would not have to integrate the schools in Baltimore. Now, I received my master's degree from Howard University at the expense of the state. Now, that was because of segregation. All right, now after segregation, has that been a benefit over the long haul? I am now, by the way, I graduated from college in 1943, so I'm older than everybody. But I am an adjunct professor at Coppin State University teaching Reading 101. And in my class, I have 20 students, but 3 or 4 may be men. It goes along with what you've been saying all along. We've got to do something about our men. And so my question is, what are the pluses and minuses with regard to integration? Have we gone on a downslide from it, or what?
Well, that's a seminar that Dr. West and I would teach together online. But what we want to say is that, of course, there are pluses and minuses. We don't want to get into a then and now kind of historical story. But part of what we want to do is to say that the covenant represents our kind of commitment to transforming our circumstances without having to make or pass the value judgment that integration was a bad thing or segregation was a good thing. What we need to do is to understand that we have to change our situation as it is.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Reverend Willie Ray. First, I want to give honor to God and the angel of this house, Dr. Vaughn. And thank God for you, Brother Tavis, for hearing so many things, great things about you, and certainly seeing you and your team, and Tyrone, my Baltimorean friend, and also all of you. My question is this, brother, and I appreciate Brother Professor Freddie, as you may, Eddie, Brother Eddie. Okay. The year of 1968, as you know, our beloved Martin went to be with the Lord, and that was the same year that God called me into the gospel ministry. My concern is, what do we do about the so-called subculture of our young kids on this corner? As you may know, Baltimore is the #2 dangerous city in the country. I have a true burden about these kids when we leave here on this corner, and certainly I'm glad my clergies are here. How do we reach that generation that the system has deemed to be X, and of course the drug culture? And I'm very burdened about it, and most of us here have children right now that's out on those corners in that subculture, and if we're gonna, and I appreciate you putting out the children first, because that's where I'm at. Hi, and I'm glad to see my brother Baptish here today, who's also about youth, as many of us.
I want the good professor to respond to that, but just let me say this. 50% of black men in Baltimore do not complete high school. 30% of them end up in prison. We need to start right now. And when I talked about 15 years, think about that. That's the time it takes to take a little baby right now to produce a person like this. And thank God for your work.
That's the answer. And the only thing I want to say, just as a footnote, we have to love them unconditionally. We have to love them unconditionally. Oftentimes what we want to do is to pass judgment and say that they just become trash. We've heard that phrase, didn't we? Right, just love them unconditionally. And then what follows from that will be left up to our imaginations. But we must begin first with loving our children.
This sounds like an oversimplistic formulation, but let me take you back to what West says, and you can find that I quote him in my introduction, so you ain't got to write this down. Get the text in the introduction. But Dr. West says again, you can't lead the people if you don't love them. You know this already, Reverend. But you can't lead them if you don't love them. You can't save them if you won't serve them. You can't lead them if you don't love them. You can't save them if you won't serve them. Whatever the answer is, it has to start with loving them and serving them. And that's what Eddie is saying. We pass judgment too often. So I don't know what the answer is, what the program is, what the policy ought to be here in Baltimore. Y'all figure that out. Y'all know what that is. This is your city. But ultimately, it's got to be based in them knowing that we love them, and they know you love them by the way you serve them. Whatever the program is, if it ain't involved, if at the center of it, there ain't no love and no service, They can't respond. Thank you, sir.
Just one thing really, really quickly about the education, because I know the stats sound horrible, but let's be real. The curriculum is ridiculous. And I don't blame them. I wouldn't go to school either. So the part of the covenant in here that talks about quality education, our teachers need to be there, our parents need to be there. Let's get a curriculum that is applicable to their needs and their interests today, and they'll go to school.
All right, our time is running. I'll move this a little faster. We only got about 15, 20 minutes left to get out of here on time. Yes, sir.
My name's Eric March, and I do want to thank you, Brother Smiley, for this effort. I'd like to talk about the way we spend our money. We operate under a myth of lack of professionalism and technical skills in our community. My family runs a funeral home, and families spend thousands of dollars with my business, and yet they won't spend $500 with a black electrician, or a black plumber, or a black auto mechanic. I mean, if you trust us with your most precious possession, your loved one, why can't you trust your plumbing to a black plumber or a black electrician? You know, we're the only tribe that does not practice tribal economics. White folks practice tribal economics, Jewish people practice tribal economics, and the Koreans practice tribal economics. You know, we're the only ones that don't. And we hire black people. We employ black people. We send black people's children to school. Black businesses take kids off the corner and give them jobs. We need to encourage more spending in black businesses.
Couldn't have said, that's right, go ahead, give him some love. Couldn't have said it better myself, which is why this book, as I mentioned earlier, is published by a black publisher, to provide another example of how we have to recycle dollars in our own community. I say to black folk all the time, and you'll read more about this in the economics chapter in the text, more about what this brother just laid out. But I say all the time, our real problem is that we spend money we don't have to buy stuff we don't need to impress folk we don't even like. That's what our problem is, and we got to get a handle on that. But it starts with supporting black-owned businesses and recycling these dollars. The text itself is an example of that, and I hope everybody pays attention to that. Yes, ma'am.
I'm a symbol here of humility and hope. 25 years ago, I was a project girl from troubled, turbulent busing in Boston at a certain Ivy League school in New Jersey. It left such a hideous scar that I have driven around New Jersey every time I went to see my people in Boston. It was so ugly back then for women and for African Americans that I forbade my son, my only son, from applying next year. Now that I see this complete turnaround in leadership, he better do well on those SATs. I just wanted to say, as a single mom of a 17-year-old, going on 17-year-old, it's so difficult for me to understand parents who fear their children. I told this child an hour ago, he better get up, he better get dressed, he better be ready. And I refuse to live in fear. I would add, Tavis, with all due respect to your saying, if you can't foster children if you fear them. I have not found the teenager who I'm afraid to speak to yet. If you would stand up, they say live long enough to embarrass your children. He's a little bit bigger than me. But let me just say, it begins with us not being afraid to tell young men, I don't care what they're packing. If God has to take me out like that, he will just have to do it. That means turning off the television. That means I'm not having hoochie mamas in my house on my television. That means I'm not having BET videos. That means I'm not having certain rap music in my house. Let me also say that the unfortunate thing is I moved to Maryland, a black city with a black mayor at the time, or actually all kinds of black leadership, because I was trying to get out of the troubled Boston busing days of the 70s that I lived with. When we moved here to what I thought was a black city with black people driving Mercedes, Jaguars, beautiful black Barbie everywhere, my child had to cut off his dreadlocks that he had from when he was 3 years old because of what? Internalized depression. Why you have nappy hair like that? I could not believe I moved this child to a place where it was uncool for him to be smart in AP classes, taking GT classes, and everything else. The only response I get in Baltimore County is from the coaches. I can't get a teacher to call me back. Now, I just wanted to say, in conclusion, that I grew up in a day when I taught children and lived with being afraid of police, being afraid of skinheads, being afraid of racist Klan members. I went to college in an atmosphere that was so hostile that we sometimes needed escorts to get back and forth to class. I'd like to know what the covenant says about internalized oppression relative to my only son. When he leaves my house, I tell him to fear people who look just like him. There's so much wrong with that.
It's a brilliant point. This covenant cannot address every single issue. But I hope that what it does do, and you have to be the judge of when you read it, I hope that what it does do is makes each and every one of us proud to be who we are. Underscores that, again, we have to take control of our own destiny. And I think the most brilliant point, you made a number of points, but the most brilliant point perhaps you made, for me at least, was that you can't foster kids if you fear kids. It's a brilliant line. And we've got to move beyond being afraid of our own children. Because you know what? They ain't afraid of you.
That's right.
These kids ain't afraid of nothing and nobody. But somehow, for some reason, we are afraid of them. That equation is all twisted. So we got to turn that around. But I thank you. We got to move quickly. I'm going to really start getting nasty now because I'm trying to get a few more people in the 10 minutes I have left. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, greetings. Thank you all. I love you all for what you're doing. I live between New York, Baltimore, and D.C. And the issue that I want to raise is the gentrification issue. And what I see happening here in Baltimore, and I see it happening very rapidly, is that people are coming in, and Baltimore is going to be not looking like it looks like, let's say, 5 years from now. It happened in Harlem. My family bought a brownstone in Harlem because we bought it, and the people that sold it to us, they wanted to sell it to blacks. You cannot buy a brownstone in Harlem now. Same thing in D.C. When I go to D.C., I just want to cry all the time because they're moving us out. And I'm like, where are these people moving to?
Let me jump in right quick. It's a brilliant point. I can tell you this. We have not gone to any city we've not gone to any city on this tour. We've not gone to any city on this tour where the issue of gentrification has not come up. Every black community, every church, every stop on this tour, that has been a major theme raised by the people in the audience, which suggests to me that somebody, somewhere, sooner than later, is going to have to start to lead a movement locally around this issue of gentrification. That leader, those leaders, I believe, are in this room today, are connected to folk in this room today. But it bothers me every time I go, we go to different cities, this comes up. In the covenant on affordable neighborhoods, you will see this issue addressed with ideas and suggestions again about what needs to be and what can be done about it. Take that to heart and somebody step up and say, I'm going to lead this movement. You want to comment on this? On gentrification in this community. Quick comment from Joy and we'll move on right quick.
Yeah, what you might want to do is talk to the folks, East Baltimore Development Corporation. We've been working with them around that whole biopark redevelopment in East Baltimore. And we've actually worked with Sustainable Cities and raised a lot of money so that folks can move out, their houses can be redone, and then they can move back. They have the first right of return. So these are things that are being done here, and Baltimore is taking the lead on this.
It can be worked on. That's what the book provides the answers.
Chapter number 8.
Chapter number 8. Yes, sir.
Okay, my name is John Crawford. I'm delighted to be here and taking your lead. I know the time is short, but I took your cue, seize the moment of which I'm doing. I've worn many hats in this community for the promotion of micro-development for businesses, increasing the quality of life, preserving history and culture of our people. What I'm here for today, some of you in the audience may remember and know this gentleman, Hugh Harrell, who did the statue of the black thinker. He had a lot of controversy over this. Mr. Harrell, now, for those of you who do not know, I used to have a studio right in front of Drew Hill Park as you came down. He was always on the porch. He is now, has Parkinson's. What I am here for is taking this to the Covenant with America to ask for support, to see that his work, one of his visions in 1975 was this black thinker to come out and leave it as a legacy for our youth to realize us as thinking beings. There's more information. where it was buried from the city on, but I'm asking for support. And also I have this because I didn't know what your schedule was, and anybody else that I can give the information to. Thank you.
Hi, I got my book on Thursday, and I've had a chance to read a few of the chapters. We know the results are not going to happen tomorrow. We've already said that. So when we have a goal, most people want to see incremental progress. What are we looking at every year? We're going to come back and say we have gotten this far, or how are we going to check ourselves?
It is an excellent question, perhaps one of the best ones today, because I like the way you're thinking that it can't just be a best-selling book, as I said earlier. How do we operationalize this? What are the measurements? In a matter of weeks down the road, to answer your question, we are going to come back and talk about the next steps. There are 5 next steps.